Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Frontline Podcast. This is the official KARDS Podcast. I am your host, Christo. My apologies if I sound a little bit hoarse today. I'm just getting over a bit of a cold, so please bear with me. But I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Elin. Elin, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the summer expansion, which we've just announced. Brothers in Arms is arriving on June 27th, with the pre-orders going live on June 23rd. So it's all happening. The spoiler season is officially kicked off, and we're going to be talking about this expansion today with our director of game design, Keli, who is joining us again to walk us through all the details of this expansion, of the reserve pool, and all the exciting things that we have to look forward to.
Keli being our first return guest to the podcast. So that's exciting in and of itself. Forget the expansion. We have somebody who's good enough to be out here 2 times. Welcome, Keli.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me again.
It's our pleasure. Why don't we get started diving into a bit of the... I'd like to start with a bit of the lore around the expansion, because I think it's so important, and we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast about how it's important to keep with the theme, right? So where did the thought for Brothers in Arms, the name, the concept behind it, where did that come from? What was the inspiration behind it?
The theme... And this time around, when we decided on theme, that it was very much from high level up. The theme is very much sort of this band of brothers, like camaraderie of soldiers fighting and sacrificing for each other, as depicted through the years in like movies and TV shows in Hollywood. So maybe a little bit of a romanticized vision of it, but something that everybody can sort of relate to and are familiar with, because we wanted sort of this familiarity to be really strong point of the theme of the expansion, that people sort of felt comfortable with what the theme of the expansion was, and not try to complicate things too much, because this, of course, this expansion is coming right on the heels of us becoming available on mobile, which is going to introduce a new crowd to the game, and we sort of wanted this sort of welcoming, comfortable theme of a new expansion to sort of greet them when they are coming in, so that's sort of where we are coming with the theme. And if you think about shows like Band of Brothers or movies like Saving Private Ryan and things like that, sort of both the camaraderie of soldiers, but also sort of the gritty sacrifices that they share through their experience.
Awesome. I'm excited to see the continued momentum from the release on mobile into the expansion. So I think that's a great way of looking at it. How can we keep this familiar to players, even if they're kind of new to the game or just picked it up for the first time? So that's awesome. I do understand there's a new mechanic as well coming in this expansion called Veteran. Can you share some light onto the Veteran keyword?
Yeah, it's a mechanic that we've been actually talking about since day one, basically, since before the game actually even came to life, because it's such an integral part of many card games, especially digital ones, where people can upgrade or level up their cards in some fashion, and we have always felt that the theme of the veteran of a fighting unit becoming a veteran fighting unit lent itself really well to this mechanic. So it was sort of a match made in heaven from our point of view, and we were just sort of waiting for the right opportunity to introduce this, and we felt that the theme we were going with in this expansion, that this would be a very good place to introduce it in. So basically what it means that the veteran mechanic is only found on units, and you play out the unit as a normal unit, but then the unit has some sort of a conditional trigger on it that will make it into a veteran version of itself, which will then transform it into that. Very often the unit becomes stronger, has higher attack or higher defense. Many times they have also some sort of a strong ability and so on. So yeah, it's very interesting from gameplay perspective, because it introduces this potential threat to the playing field, but it also gives the enemy, usually gives the enemy also an opportunity to or a decision to make on when and how to deal with it. Does he try to deal with it right away before it becomes veteran, or does he just continue to focusing on attacking the headquarters or so on? So it creates an interesting strategic sort of decision making for players.
Do you, off the top of your head, know approximately how many of the new cards will have a veteran kind of keyword to it or functionality to it?
Yeah, there are 14 units in the new set that have that. Plus, there are several other cards that sort of relate to the ability in some way, trigger when somebody becomes veteran, or do something specifically to a veteran unit, and so on. So in total, there are around 20 cards maybe in the new set that are in some way linked to the veteran mechanic.
Awesome. That's a good chunk of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the new set is 92 cards, so this is about a quarter of it, 20%, somewhere there between.
Elin, it looked like you were trying to get a word in there.
It was exactly what I was going to say. We've got 92 cards in this expansion, so it's a sizable chunk. But we also have some other stuff going on, and some themes. I guess that maybe Keli can explain a little bit aside from the veteran.
Yeah, as I said earlier, we sort of came at this expansion with the high level theme first, and then we started to explore, okay, we have this theme, now how does that relate to the game itself beyond the veteran mechanic? And we actually found that a lot of the existing stuff that we have in the game relates very strongly to the theme, especially anything that has to do with being adjacent to each other, the pincer mechanic, where two units are stronger if they are pincered together. Anything that has to do with having multiple units in certain positions, and having the position matter where you are placed on the battlefield and so on. All these things we felt were very thematic to what we wanted to do. So were all things that we sort of expanded upon, and so players will see a lot of stuff that is sort of harping on stuff that we've done earlier, but we're in many cases taking new twists on it or spinning it in new directions.
Awesome. You mentioned different themes, and obviously certain themes probably fit different nations a bit better. Are some of those themes going to be tied into the different nations and a little bit more, thematic about their strengths and weaknesses and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of I would say on the whole, this expansion is probably as more, on average, more cards that are inspired by by the theme than previous sets. I mean, we always try to be sort of faithful to the historical accuracy in terms of units, how strong they actually performed and so on. But with this set, I think we went a bit further in many ways. For instance, we take the veteran mechanic. It is mostly found in Germany and the Soviet, because they of course saw maybe the heaviest type of land fighting in the war, but also how the veteran mechanic works for each nation is different. For instance, Germany usually has veteran units that are cheaper and can become veteran faster, but are maybe then not as strong as veterans. While the Soviets, for instance, are a bit slower, they become veterans slower, but are then stronger, and that sort of reflects the narrative of the war of the Germans coming out fast out of the block and getting this early advantage with strong early veteran units, while the Soviets sort of come in later and start to overwhelm later with their veteran units, the way we did this with other nations is similar, and I think a couple of the cards that we'll be spoiling today, I can explain also the mechanic or theme for that one when we get to it. But maybe to mention one quick thing first is there are other themes there also that I feel is very thematic. For instance, the United States. We have the repair mechanic, or that we haven't really explored very much so far in the game, but we are exploring it a lot more in this new set. A lot of new repair-related cards that care about the repair mechanic one way or another. So that potentially could lead to a new type of deck that we haven't really seen before. And that also is something that I feel is thematic of the US sort of having really good logistics and being able to sort of replenish themselves and come again and again, and never really being out of the fight.
I'm really excited for a lot of this thematic stuff that will allow us to build new decks and new archetypes, because we will get to the reserve pool in a little bit, and there are going to be some changes made. So you're definitely going to need some additional kind of cards and strategies to fill those gaps and give you more tools to be able to, build something new and continue to push forward in your climb. So I'm excited to chat about that. Keli, you did mention that we were going to spoil 2 cards today, and we will. So stay tuned. We're going to get to that in just a second. And Elin, this might be a question more so for you. Where by the time this goes live, we'll have already spoiled a dozen cards, I believe. You want to walk us through a bit around what the kind of spoiler schedule looks like here?
So, yeah, I mean, we've got the kickoff is essentially happened yesterday on the Thursday 25th, and it's going to go on until June 23rd, which is when the pre-orders go live. So it's about 4 weeks, and we'll have a reveal or a few reveals almost every single day, and you can expect to see this in various places where we're going to be spoiling a little bit here in the podcast. We're going to be spoiling a little bit in some upcoming broadcasts. We're going to be spoiling a bit on the official KARDS Discord server. We've got some really fun stuff lined up for you there, so definitely make sure you go check out the official KARDS Discord if you want to participate in all the fun with the Discord reveals. And then we've also got a few reveals which are going to be carried out by some of our community contributors. So some of our streamers, YouTubers, some of our content creators are going to be revealing some cards. And of course, we'll keep you up to date on where you can see these card reveals with some advance, so you can all make sure to show up and join in on the fun and the theory crafting and the chat around that. And we will also have a summary page, which in our kickoff article, we link to this summary page. So make sure you bookmark that and then check back, because every week we will update that photo to give you the summary of that week with every single card that we've revealed in various different places. So if you missed a day or two, you can always go there and make sure that you get the weekly update. So that's what we've got ahead. And of course, pre-orders are live now. You can already pre-order your packs from the upcoming expansion. We've got a couple of different bundles. The smaller one is 14 standard packs for 200 diamonds. The bigger one is 24 standard packs and 12 officer packs, of course, from the new expansion for 1,000 diamonds. And both of these bundles also include a couple of cosmetics. We've got the exclusive Brothers in Arms card back, as well as the brand new emote Rendezvous with Destiny, which is the powerful motto of the 101st Airborne Division. So pretty exciting stuff there. Definitely, you can head into game right now and check it out in the new shop.
Exciting stuff. I'm definitely going to go check that out. And I appreciate you getting the community involved, the community contributors, being able to show off some of these new cards. And the thing I really like about it is the fact that you're putting out a schedule so people know where to find them, so they can go and actually look at these community contributors and see what's going on. So always appreciate 1939 going and giving their community a little bit of love. So phenomenal job with that. I don't know if there's anything else we want to be talking about, or if we should just dive into the two brand new cards we're going to reveal here.
I think we should just dive into the cards. I'm so excited.
Excellent. Let's do it. So first up, I think we've got the Hurricane, do we not?
We do. We've got the Hurricane Mark II-C Trop. This is a veteran card, a fighter unit from Britain. And maybe Keli can talk us a little bit through this card as we're seeing it on the screen.
First to note, I mentioned earlier that Germany and Soviet had most of the elites, with the US then coming after that. But those nations are all mostly focused on especially Germany and the Soviet on ground unit-based veteran units, while we felt it was much more thematic for for Britain to have an air-based veteran units, because it sort of harks back to their sort of Battle of Britain and their desperate fight for air supremacy there, and then their later when they went on the offensive, the importance of air supremacy in all their operations. So that was the direction we wanted to take there, to have that sort of distinction between those nations. So and that's why we chose the Hurricane as a veteran unit for Britain to have. It has an ability that we've seen before, but we wanted to use here again, because it sort of links so. It feels such a natural way to become veteran. You get engaged in combat, and if you survive the combat, you become better at fighting, and then so it felt sort of one of those no-brainer conditions to become veteran. And the veteran version, of course, is a significant upgrade, and for the cost that you're paying, you can get a pretty powerful unit out, but of course, as you know, it's not completely trivial to try to survive every combat that you get into, and so you're not guaranteed the veteran version. But if you do manage to pull it through, you're gonna have a very powerful fighter sitting in your backline.
So Keli, with the veteran cards, because I'm thinking to myself how this can change the way you're looking to play the game, right? You've got something like the Hurricane out. You can decide, hey, I'm going to remove a card from my opponent that will also destroy the Hurricane. And you may tell yourself, actually, hold on. Maybe my first attack will be into something a little bit smaller. I'll take some damage, but I will upgrade my card. So I guess my question is, with that interaction, does the Hurricane, when it gets moved to veteran status, does it retain the damage it takes, or does that kind of start fresh with a brand new card?
Yeah, it's a really great Great question, and the way it works is for all veteran cards is that when it becomes veteran, all its stats are reset: the cost, the attack, and the defense, and so they sort of is a sort of a nice side bonus to becoming veteran is that the unit essentially heals itself, even if it doesn't count as a repair officially. So that of course can be really strong, but it should be noted that it works for all the other stats as well. So for instance, it might not be the best strategy, for instance, to maybe buff a card that it can't become veteran, because when it becomes veteran, it would lose that buff. So people should keep that in mind. But more importantly, while the stats are reset, any sort of state effects are going to continue. So for instance, if the unit was pinned, it will continue to be pinned. If it had some special effects on it, for instance, is under greater purpose that allows you to draw a card when it dies, or has supply shortage on it where it takes damage every turn, those effects will continue on the veteran side. So because it is essentially the same unit, you're not getting a new unit. It's the same unit, just with an upgraded version of it. So there is that distinction that in some sense it resets itself, but it still retains some of its old memory, so to speak.
So to simplify it as much as possible, all of the numbers will become the new numbers. So operating cost, your attack, your defense, like all of that remains the same. All of that changes, but any other factors that were added to it, that all sticks around.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So let's move on to the second card. We got the Key 45 Dragon Slayer. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of that, Keli?
Yeah, again, we have an air unit and the same sort of thematic reasoning is there as for the British is that in general we want to focus Japanese veteran more in the air than on the ground, and we feel this sort of as a historical is more historically accurate. And maybe it should be noted as a quick side note that even if we are getting a lot of veteran cards now, we definitely see the veteran mechanic as something that we want to continue to develop down the road. So we're almost certainly going to continue to see veteran units as we get new expansions in the future. But regarding the Dragon Slayer, besides having one of the coolest name in the game, it's can be an extremely powerful unit, but it's pretty unique in the way it becomes veteran or doesn't become veteran based on the timing that you're playing it out, and that only the first version that you get actually becomes veteran, and that actually is a very sort of thematic design in a sense, in that if you read up on the Pacific War, you will notice a very recurrent theme there is that Japan had a very powerful air force at the start of the war, but it was fragile in the sense that they had a lot of difficulty in replacing their losses. At the end of the war, they had a severe lack of trained pilots, and this affected their fighting performance a lot. So this is reflected in the card in the way that your first card that you start with is the best one. That has the veteran pilots that you've been training for years before the war started, but the later pilots are not as experienced and lack the oomph that you get from the first ones. So that's sort of the reasoning behind the design of the card is to reflect this limited pool of pilots that Japan was using.
I love that. That did not cross my mind at all. I was looking at it going, this seems kind of backwards. So I appreciate you adding that kind of color to it, because it really does make a whole lot of sense based on the losses that they suffered and how they were going about replenishing their pilots. So really, really interesting stuff there. I'm also very excited to see how this interacts with the other veteran cards that are coming out, the ones that are going to support that archetype and support the theme. So lots of good stuff still to come. Stay tuned for our continued spoiler season over the next little while, because there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming out. I think it might be time to jump into the second topic of our podcast. Unless, Elin, anything else you wanted to cover for the expansion? Feel like we're pretty good?
I think we wrapped it up pretty nicely, and I think it's definitely time to talk about the reserve pool, the other big topic that we've announced at the same time.
Yes, the reserve pool, because I've seen the graphic for the reserve pool that I imagine we're going to flash up here on the screen fairly shortly. And there's some spicy takes there. So let's just start with the logistics, the nuts and bolts of this. And maybe, Elin, you can kind of start this off. Just how many cards, when are they going to the reserve pool?
So we've got 90 cards going into the reserve pool this time around. They are going to go into the reserve pool on June 23rd, which is when the pre-order packs go live. So anyone who's bought the pre-orders can then get their cards from the new expansion. And so that's when the others move into the reserve pool. Now, they're going to stop dropping from packs on May 30th, I believe. So you're not going to be able to get them in packs anymore with quite a bit of advance. And you will, I believe, be warned when you are going to try and craft these cards. So that's sort of the overview, and of course, there's a lot of specifics in there, and I'm sure that Keli can talk us a little bit more about sort of what the ideas are with some of the cards that are going to be moved into the reserve pool. Obviously, we've got cards from various nations, and when you look into it, we've got a few different kind of themes. I mean, we're seeing some resistance cards moving into the reserve pool. We're seeing some research. So why don't you talk us through a little bit of the thought process there, Keli, behind the reserve pool?
Yeah. Maybe first a quick continuation a little bit on the number crunching. We of course did reserve 5 cards back when we introduced or first implemented this feature back in April. So in total we will have 95 cards that are moving out and 92 cards coming in. Moving forward, because this is the first time we're doing this, so the numbers are a little bit different now than they are what we intend the expansions being moving forward. But the intention is that the future expansions are going to be around 100 cards total in size. Of those, 80 are going to be new cards and 20 are going to be cards that are coming back from the reserve pool and going back into rotation. And of course, these numbers are a little bit approximate. I mean, sometimes they might be slightly higher or slightly lower on some ends, but those are sort of the ballpark figures that we are working with. But of course, now there are no cards returning, and that's why the numbers for this expansions are slightly different than what we will see moving forward. But yeah, in deciding which cards to move out, we decided that we were not going to sort of focus on one specific group of cards, but rather sort of skim from the top of everything. So there are going to be cards there that see very little use. There are going to be cards that see very heavy use and are chosen for that reason specifically. There are cards there that have created some frustrations and complaints in the community. There are cards there that have had some sort of technical issues, legacy issues with them that we just want to sort of get rid of in a sense, and all kinds of things. So we are sort of pulling from many different directions when we are decided on these 90 cards to go into the rotation pool for right now.
Awesome. So just to clarify, we could see some of these cards come back as quickly as the winter expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, with the numbers I mentioned earlier, 20 of these cards are going to come back right away. So they're not going to stay out for long. And so we definitely earmarked some of these. I mean, there are some cards that are probably never going to return, but I'm not going to mention who those cards are. But there are other cards that are almost certainly to return, whether it's going to be next winter or next year or the year after. That's still up for debate. But we know there are some cards that we are taking out now that we are going to bring back later. We just want to give them a bit of a breather on the sidelines, and I think I'm not ruining anything by mentioning that, for instance, the research cards are one such type of card. I mean, they are a great fun cards that most players like, but they are also very ubiquitous, and I think it's fine to sort of give them a bit of a break and players sort of to give players some new things to think about in deck construction. But the resource cards are going to come back, but I'm not saying exactly when it's going to be. It could be half a year from now, it could be 2 years from now.
Awesome. So I don't think we'll hear too many people complaining about resistance cards getting removed. However, I do want to talk about some of the other stuff, because we have seen in tournament after tournament, I mean, Jagro is always a thing. Brit Air is always a thing. Frontline, pretty much always a thing. Those have kind of been the templates of decks that we've seen pretty standard over the last while. And now I look at these reserve cards and I look at the lists and I go, all right, Brit Air, well, Empire Strikes allows them to have a really good reach to clear the board. Feigned Retreat for Jagro is like the card in Feigned Retreat that continues to give you gas late into the game when you have no cards left in hand. You got the 32nd Infantry Regiment that is really strong for Frontline to start building that momentum early in the game, thin your deck out and push to the front line. So were some of these specifically targeted based on their position in some of the more competitive decks in the game? Kind of how did you come up with some of the cards on this list?
Yeah, I mean, you make some great examples there, and I mean, in general, our intention was to sort of gently nerf everything in a sense. We didn't want to use the rotation here to really target any one specific strategy or deck too much, apart from sort of very narrow ones which we are choosing for different reasons, like resistance, for instance. But for the rest, we sort of just went through all of them and sort of nudged a card or two from each one. But specifically those decks that you mentioned, like Frontline and Brit Air and Jagro and Discard are all examples of decks that are top level decks, and we decided in the end, after some deliberation, to maybe be a little bit more heavy-handed on them. The main reason being that I mean, even if this whole thing is a big shakeup, I mean, 90 new cards coming in, 90 cards going out, it is a very big shakeup. We still need to remember that we still have 700 older cards still in the pool, and they are definitely going to continue to have a big impact on the types of decks that are viable. So there is only so far that you can go in a single rotation, and if people are looking towards a completely different type of meta than what we've been seeing, it's probably going to take a couple of more rotations to really take things there. But still, having said that, it would be a bit of a shame with all these changes that we're making if we would just continue to see the usual suspects in being the top dogs still. So yeah, we decided to be a bit more ham-handed with these top decks. So that's why we went up a bit heavier on them. For instance, also including the illustrious for the Brit Air, including things like Patrol for the US Frontline and MI5 for the discard and so on. So hopefully, I mean, these decks are still very much viable despite these changes, but hopefully they've been taken down a peg or two enough for other strategies and other decks to rise up to at least compete with them a little bit. But people should still expect that some of the old decks are going to continue to exist despite having lost a few key cards. Faint Retreat specifically, I mean, Jaggro existed before Faint Retreat came about, so we have no worries about their viability, but the decision to go for Faint Retreat was because it had such a warping effect on what type of Jaggro decks we were seeing. We were basically, it had come to the point where we were only seeing Faint Retreat Jaggro decks which have a very specific build because of the restrictions on Faint Retreat, and we wanted to sort of open up Jaggro to explore a few new different avenues which wouldn't have been available to them if they still were sort of straitjacketed into this Faint Retreat constraint.
And that's a pretty standard piece, I think, when it comes to any card game, where some of these cards have been around for so long that you've come to the optimized build for a deck. The Faint Retreat Jaggro deck is just the best deck you can build for Jaggro. So people are going to tweak a card here and there, but for the most part, you've got the same deck. And that's normal based on the fact that you've been sprinkling in new cards as opposed to releasing a full new set here. So I think, Keli, to your point, the viability, we're going to see, because there's going to be new cards that are going to impact the meta, adjust how the game is played, and force players to test and try new things, which I think is great. I think that's a big part of why people enjoy card games. You hear folks talk about, heck, every time I cast with Bubbles, I feel like he talks about, a new OTK deck that he wants to try, or some new combo deck that he wants to try, and introducing 90 new cards and taking away a few of the tools from the top decks is going to give more freedom and design space there to come up with more fun stuff and different stuff and creative stuff to hopefully introduce a bit of a new meta, because I don't think it's any secret that the tournament meta has been a pretty standard affair for the last little while.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, the deck construction part is half the fun of playing card games. It's this exploration of sort of trying to find new synergies or new combinations that create something new and powerful, and we need new cards and shake-ups in the meta for that to happen. Otherwise, basically, just people become bored, and we're really hoping that this shake-up that we're seeing now, the new expansion plus the rotation, creates enough impetus for people to really enjoy that part of the game again, which maybe has been a bit stifled for them for the last few months at least.
I have one last question for you, Keli, around some of these cards, because you did mention discard and you mentioned resistance specifically. And we talked a little bit earlier about how KARDS Mobile is coming out very shortly. And this is from my perspective, playing against discard and playing against resistance doesn't feel very good. It's not fun having things taken out of my hand or having things jammed into my hand so I overdraw. Any thought behind that of saying, hey, we're going to have an influx potentially of new players on mobile. We don't want their first experience playing cards to be against resistance.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why they sort of were one of the first cards on the list when we started to list out what we wanted to rotate out, exactly for this reason. I mean, there are of course players that enjoy the strategy, and I mean, I fully admit that I'm one of them. I mean, I designed those strategies back in the days, and I'm sort of in the boat where I'm fine with playing both with and against these strategies. But I mean, that's just me, and I fully acknowledge that I'm very likely in the minority when it comes to those opinions. Discard specifically is something that we still want to keep in the game in some form, just because we feel it's such a sort of thematic part of the whole experience, of sort of the economic warfare part of World War II. So we are almost certainly always going to keep it in some form, but at the same time, we always monitor it very heavily and don't want it to become too powerful for too long. I mean, we are fine with it getting its time in the sun every now and then, but only for sort of a limited periods and in the limited form. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we are keeping a very tight lid on, and on the whole, we are more careful about introducing frustrating mechanics or frustrating cards like this, and try to keep it to a very low number.
And that's kind of the beauty of the reserve system, where you can rotate things in and out. So like you said, yeah, discard can be great for a minute, and then we can take some of it back out, and we can introduce something new down the line, and we can spin that back around. So I think that gives you a great tool to be able to, pull back and push forward a little bit without constantly just having to nerf and adjust cards that are currently in the game. Now, I don't
absolutely, and maybe one more thing that if I can throw in here is of course, when we were deciding on these cards, which cards to rotate out, one other element that heavily influenced us was, of course, what was coming in the new set. We were constantly sort of seeing, okay, this card is coming in, and that is maybe making too many of these specific effects in this nation, so we need to take something out in instead, and so on. So I think many of the cards, I mean, now that the full rotation list is visible, there may be a bit of context lacking for maybe some of the choices there of why we are choosing this card and not that card, and so on. But I think when people, as the spoiler season gets going more heavily, and people start to see more and more of the new expansion, I think they will understand better why we were making many of the choices that we made.
Yeah, definitely missing a bit of the bigger picture here that will slowly kind of put the pieces together over time. I don't want to play good cop, bad cop here, but I will just a little bit. Keli is taking Feigned Retreat away from me. Elin, what are you giving me? Because I'm a little bit upset about it.
Well, we are going to have a compensation. So it's great that you bring that up. There is going to be what we're calling a one-time compensation in the form of some card packs that players are going to be able to claim in-game when the expansion is fully live on June 27th. There's going to be a limited amount of time that you can claim that. I mean, of kind of a couple of months. So you'll need to make sure that you log in and claim your compensation there. But then, of course, going forward, the plan is the crate rework, which we did discuss in our previous podcast with Keli. And so that is going to serve more in the future as the kind of future sort of compensation mechanic, where when cards that you have in your collection go into the reserve pool, that's going to contribute to your crate fullness and get you some goodies out of there. And of course, I do also want to mention, as a part of this reserve pool discussion, that cards being in the reserve pool, they're still in your collection. And you can still play them in AI training games. You can still play them against your friends. And you can still create them with wildcards if you so choose. And we do have an upcoming PvP game mode that we will be introducing a little bit later, where you're going to be able to use these cards as well. So they're in the reserve pool. but they're not gone. And as we mentioned earlier, they might even come back. So it'll be an interesting way for cards moving forward.
We might be jumping a little too far ahead. I'm going to ask the question nonetheless. Excuse me. You're going to essentially have now pretty much your standard gameplay where you're going to take the reserve cards out. You're going to be able to still complete all your rewards and get all your, progress on the tracks for the different nations and do all that in the kind of more open format. Might be too far ahead to answer that question.
That's a good question. I think that's one for Keli.
Yeah, I mean, the current plan is that yes, you can finish your daily missions and you'll progress on the national progress and all like that. The only thing that is going to be missing is that there is not going to be a rank or a leaderboard or an OCC or an officer club or anything like that for the classic battle mode.
Perfect. That's awesome. And I appreciate implementing the new crate system. As much as I think it's a great idea, there is something inherently frustrating opening a pack and watching your crate go up by 0.2%. So it's great when you open it. The lead up to there is a little bit demoralizing for me, at least. I'm speaking only for myself.
And to be fair, this has gotten almost into a bigger problem as you're getting less and less duplicates each time, which is obviously has been the main part of filling up your crate. So, but it's going to be really interesting when the crate rework kicks in fully, which I believe we have planned for this fall. So it's exciting times ahead.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Keli, for joining us. Before we wrap up, any last things you'd like to add around the expansion or the reserve pool?
No, I think we've covered most of the stuff. I mean, there are, of course, more stories to tell, but I think we need to wait for the full spoiler before we can really tell them.
Maybe we have Keli back for a third time on the podcast once all the cards are released and we just do story time with Keli. And we get some background and some context as to why these cards were put into place. I love it. Thank you so much for jumping in. Thank you for giving us all that insight into the new expansion as well as the upcoming changes to the reserve pool. Elin, any last words for you to the community?
I want to make sure to mention again, check out KARDS.com. Go there up into the news section. Go and check out our kickoff article. That's where you're going to get all the details about the 12 cards that we spoiled yesterday. You're going to get the link for where to go to see the card summary. You're going to know where to go to get the full image of all the cards going into the reserve pool. So all the details are going to be in there. Make sure you go check it out, bookmark that summary page and check back weekly. And of course, make sure to follow us on social media, join us on Discord so you don't miss a thing.
Amazing. Thank you so much to both of you for coming and hanging out. Most importantly, thank you all for listening and watching the Frontline, the official KARDS podcast. Stay tuned for all the spoilers for Brothers in Arms coming on June 27th.